Our understanding of the marine world is years, decades behind our understanding of the terrestrial world. From our work, the previous misunderstanding that's commonly held by people diving in Thailand is that most marine life can be found on the coral reef. But there are a whole range of incredibly strange and poorly understood species that can be found away from the coral reef in deeper sandy environments for our work, but also in shallow mangroves and a variety of other environments that get less attention. Another one related to make successful coral conservation. I feel like science is constantly changing and management needs to keep pace with that. The same technique that has been done for decades in the past will still be effective and applicable today, or a technique that's applied in one location will be just as effective in another location. That is an overly simplistic view. Within the world of coral conservation, we have historically relied on techniques that are now 30 or 40 years old, of lots of propagation. We call this asexual propagation. But as we learn more, we understand the value of genetic diversity. This is some of the great work that's being done at Koh Samui by Ajahn Suchana's team. And what you see here are corals that are genetically distinct. These are genetically diverse corals, and this genetic diversity is incredibly important in promoting resilience on our reefs. If most of our restoration relies on asexual reproduction, what we're doing is reducing the genetic diversity in an area, and therefore we're reducing the resilience of a coral reef to withstand stress. A sustainable way of addressing at least these issues is having improved representation of scientists within the decision-making process, but also an improvement in the communication between scientists and the general public. Science communication, as well as just general awareness of what is happening in the scientific community. It is about more inclusion between those in positions of management, those that are managing the marine environment, biodiversity and conservation decisions, being better informed. I was inspired by seeing what successful conservation could look like here in Thailand as a representation of what it can look like elsewhere in the world. So that's what motivated me to stay in Thailand and continue working here. ATMEC stands for the Out Thai Marine Ecology Center. We are based in the Gulf of Thailand. We focus on combining biodiversity research with biodiversity conservation and biodiversity education. Our goals are essentially to be one of the leading institutions that conduct biodiversity research, but particularly involving members of the general public and people that we're educating into the research and conservation that we do. One of our most successful projects has been actually the work that I've been doing with Ajahn Suchana at Chula, both for my PhD and for my postdoctoral work. In that project, we were able to study and explore a variety of deep sandy areas to study a large number of new species and rare species that had either never been studied before and were discovered for the first time, or had not been studied in a very, very long time or ever in Thailand. Some of the corals that we came across, formerly extinct or believed to be extinct species of marine sponge that was rediscovered in the Gulf of Thailand. We've been seeing major impacts from marine plastic pollution, marine debris, affecting these animals just as we learn to discover or rediscover them. We learn not only about the things that exist, but also we may lose them before we finish learning about them. The lessons that we've learned from this project, what we can then bring to the next generation, is embracing the idea of the value of genetic diversity and the value of both marine diversity as well as diversity within a population, in it being resilient for the future generations, for our future generations, but also for the generations of the marine environment. For the next generation of marine scientists and marine conservationists, there are two aspects. The first and most important skill is keeping curiosity, maintaining that curiosity. And then the other skill is openness to failure and openness to things not working out. I'll be the first to admit that not all of my experiments or not all of my projects have worked, but that's how we learn. And I think if there was increased communication about things that didn't work, society as a whole would improve, so would science. And I think the next generation could really learn from our lessons and do more of that. Why did I choose Chulalongkorn to do my PhD? it was a fairly obvious choice. There's not that many people that have a shared interest in the kind of work that I had when I had the questions that I had to pursue my PhD. Ajahn Suchana was one of the only people pursuing the work in the topics of nudibranch sea slugs, species exploration, as well as having an openness to ideas that are new, as well as openness to questions that people weren't asking. My experience at Chula was incredibly positive, and I think the future of at least the part of Chula that I was most involved with, I think is exciting.